Hi everyone, welcome to today's class. Today we're gonna see Asset Liability Management in Banks Unit 4. Okay, let we start. The first one is connectivity among RO, BO, HO. RO means regional office, BO means branch office, HO means head office. Okay, by this three is main office, regional, branch, and HO. Okay, another first we're gonna see the head office. What is head office? So head office is a bank refers to the banking office exercising control over and ownership of the more branches. Okay, it is a head office. And regional bank. So mainly this is depository institutions. Oh, that is bank, savings, loan, credit union, which is larger than the community bank. So which operates below the state level but is smaller than a money center bank. So which operates either nationally or internationally. This regional bank is one that operates in region of country. So such as a state within the group of states. So the definition of the constitution regional bank is not precise. So they generally provide with some limitations same services a larger bank such as the deposit loans, lease, mortgage, credit cards, ATM, like this. Okay, so also known as a branch office, an office where business for a particular geographic area is handled. Next one is definition for a regional bank is, so it is the known as in the term of US. Okay, in the US the term regional bank is used to describe the mid-sized depository institution that is larger than the community bank, so but smaller than one of the large money center banks. So the term regional bank does not have an exact definition, but a regional bank has a certain characteristics. So first in the list ranked by the assets, regional bank would not make the top 5. So but the largest of these would be in the top 25. The next one is branch office. So branch office means it is still an integral part of the Indian banking system. So, as most Indians still believe the cash transaction and prefer to visit the banks in a person for outline banking operations. So, by this, these bank branches are the face of the banks where customers can visit, talk to the officials for getting better insights into new policies. So, investment scheme, other banking services. On top of it, the personal touch in every service leaves a greater impact in the minds of customers. So, however, banking in India has changed its facets way of doing business over the years, especially after the technology and magnification. So people have started towards the latest modes of the banking like e-banking, mobile banking, etc. So but the acceptance percentage is low as compared to the other countries. So these innovations hold premises promising futures, and branches have to continually evolve to remain relevant in coming times. Definition for a branch banking. Okay, according to the Goldfield and Chandler. Okay, a branch bank is a banking corporation that directly own two or more banking agencies. Okay, it is a branch office which is having two or more banking agencies. So thus this branch banking is a system in which bank renders its banking activities in two or more places. So the head office has the overall control overall the working of the various branches. Okay, then the next one is relevance. Okay, relevance of branch banking. So this is the relevance. It has a lot of importance in India as it makes a banking possible for people living in a rural remote areas. This is true source of a inclusive growth. So the success of Pradhan Mantri Jandan Yojana, okay, this is has been a possible due to the extensive branch networks. So this branch banking makes management more responsive and efficient over the centralized banking operations. Also, the risk is well spread across the branches and no single office has to suffer. So this helps banks to offer more securities and investment options to its customers. Also, due to the wide geographic spread, a broader customer base, deposits used in one branch can be used, profitability used as a loans and investment in other branches. So this type of banking system can easily reach people in backward areas. So there are some negative points too which branch system faces, like delays in decision making due to the limited power of branches. This influenced by a local political leaders or administrations. The next one is understanding. How will they understand the branch banking? So by this they need some past laws enabling such interest branching. So this branch banking is the operation of a storefront spin-offs offering the same key services. So it has undergone significant changes since 1980s, okay, in response in the more competitive national markets of financial services and growth of internet banking. So if you use a branch bank today, it is most likely to be one of the big four. So then 1999, the Congress repealed the law of had forced banks to keep their investment services separate from their banking services. The next one, how branch banking works, how it will work. So by branch banking allows a financial institution to expand its services outside of its home location into smaller storefronts in the function extensions. So this can be more cost effective approach because it allows smaller office to provide key services with while larger locations may have additional offerings. So the phone app still has not entirely replaced the bank branch on ATM. So in this, according to GIVO banking rate surveys nearly 2019, almost half of the 1,000 participants said that preferred method of a banking was branch bank or ATM. So 25% responded that they use a mobile app instead of branch banking. So this branch banking network have evolved into multi-state financial service networks, so which allow depositors to access their accounts from any banking office. So however, the number of branch banks is decreasing. According to the American bankers, the number of US bank branches declined 99,540. Okay, these banks are constrained from closing some branches by terms of Community Reinvestment Act of 1977. So, which requires banks to make an effort to provide services. The next one is unit banking versus branch banking. What is unit and what is branch? So unit is defined as an institution that operates without a branches. There is single unit, okay, single branch. So some independent community banks still prefer to operate a small scale only. So not all the unit banks are independent. Even if they do not share a name with a larger banking entity, they may be along the banks that are owned by a larger holding company while retaining a familiar name. Okay, the next one is under this branch office advantage. So advantages of branch office. The first one, economic of large scale operations. So mainly known as it is a branch banking enjoys the advantages economics of a large scale operations. So under branch banking system, economics can maintained through large scale operations and wider geographical coverage. So which increase public confidence in the banking system. The second one, economy of cash reserves. So under this branching banking system, in a particular branch can operate without keeping a larger amount of reserves. So in the time need resources can be transferred from one branch to another. Third one, proper use of capital. So this is a proper user because under the branch banking system, since the resources are transferred from one branch to another, so the capital can be properly used by investing the profitable branches. Then economy of cost. So this is a banking has an advantage of effecting remittance of funds from one place to another. So with the greater ease and at a lesser cost than unit banking for inter-office indebtedness can be far more easily adjusted. Then risk spreading economy. So the spreading of risk geographically is another major advantage of a branch banking system. So in branch banking, losses incurred one branch can be offset by profit earned by profit making branches, which is not possible in case of the unit banking. Next one is easy and cheaper transfer of funds. So since the branches of bank under branch banking are spread all over the country, it is easier and cheaper for it to transfer funds from one place to another. Then the next one is greater safety and liquidity. So which means branch banking also offers a wider scope for the selection of a diverse securities. So which varied investments. So that the higher degree of safety liquidity can be maintained. So under branch banking, the banking facilities can be made available to all the cities, towns and even the backward areas in the country. So this branch banking is very helpful in achieving a balanced growth of the country's economy. The next one is balanced emotional growth. So balanced emotional growth means I already explained. The next one, convenient for the central bank supervision. So under a system of a branch banking, it is more convenient for the central bank of the government to regulate, supervise the activities of the banks. Finally, provision for training and personnel. So mainly this branch banking provides the best training ground for a personnel. So a person may be trained in a small branch where the pressure of work is less, and he may be transferred later in the active branch. There will be work pressure more. So after that smaller training only they will move to the next level. Next, we gonna see branch office at disadvantages. So first one, danger of mismanagement. So why it is danger means under the bank branching system, number of difficulties regard the management based on supervision, control. Okay, in this number of branches and the expansion lead the danger of mismanagement. Second one, delays in decision making. So once the decision is over, they have to once the critical situation means they have to make a decision quick. So but they with the system of the bank branching also suffer from a red tape and delay the account of inadequate authority for the bank managers. And then lack of personal contact, so which means a large bank tends to become more and more impersonal. Okay, the general managers have hardly any personal contact with the local people. Next one, high operating and maintenance expenses. So which means a branch banking is very expensive because with the opening of too many branches, establishment and maintenance charges of the branches are bound to be high. So as a result, the profit may shrink. Next one, concentration of monopoly power in the hands of fewer banker. So which means a branch banking sometimes creates monopoly power in the hands of few large bankers. So such as this power in the hands of few big bankers is a source of danger to the community whose goal is socialistic pattern of the society. Next one is lack of initiative. So this lacks initiative. No branch office can take independent decisions. Also branch manager has limited powers. Then finally, regional imbalances. So these branch banking encourages regional imbalances. Thus, this resource emotionally backward areas tend to get transferred. So this industrial business centers due to which backward areas continue to the neglected and remain over the backward. Next, we gonna see how to set up a branch office. Okay. So mainly these are the conditions for setting up a branch office. The applicant company must be corporate incorporated outside India. So and the name of the Indian branch office must be same as a parent company. If a branch office does not have a revenue from the India operations, its expenses must be met by the head office. So then the net worth of a branch office must not be less than US 1,100,000. Okay. So and the parent company should have a profit making record in immediately preceding 5 financial years in the home country. So in cases where the applicant foreign entity does not meet the financial criteria, the parent company may issue a letter of comfort, so which is given a company satisfies the prescribed criteria for net worth and profit. And permitted activities, so which means it is a India branch office cannot directly carry out manufacturing activities unless such manufacturing activities done, so with the purpose of exporting products out of India. So it may also subcontract such activity to one Indian manufacturer. So foreign company must be engaged in trading and manufacturing activities in its home country in order to set up a branch office in India. So under this permitted activities, export or import of goods, rendering professional or consultancy services, and research work, representing and acting as a buying and selling agent for the parent company. Then how to register? Once we have decided to start a branch office and set up means, how to register means, to open a branch office in India, a foreign company must be apply for approval from the Reserve Bank. So under the provisions of FEMA means Foreign Exchange Management Act. So this foreign entities whose principal business falls under the sectors where 100% foreign direct investment is permissible under the automatic route must be complete the FNC. So by this, the procedure for registration requires a foreign company to deposit the following set of the forms. The first one, FNC. Okay, FNC form duly signed by the AR. Okay. Then information about the parent company along with its certificate of incorporation. Then third one, the incorporation documents of the branch office. Then the proof of registered office, note on location and proposed activity, the latest audited balance sheet of the applicant, and the board resolution to open the branch office, and lastly KYC of the authorized signatory, finally information about the local representative of the parent company in the branch office. So these are the how to register the bank offices. And the next, for the procedures I already told, and there is a taxation for a setup too. So the branch office does not have the separate legal entity and is subject to the law governing its parent office. So as a result, in India, branch office is taxed as a foreign company and is liable to pay a tax at least 40% plus applicable surcharge and cess. Okay. A remittance. Remittance means it is a remit outside India. So the profit, okay, net of applicable Indian taxes of the branch. So mainly in this remittance, the dealer of surplus submitted a certified copy of the audited balance sheet and profit and loss account for relevant year, and the chartered accountant certificate certifying the matter of arriving at the remittable profits. The next topic which we gonna move, sources of data. How the data sources are made. So there are two sources of data in a statistics. Okay, the statistical source refers to the data that are collected from some official purposes, include census, officially conducted surveys. So non-statistical, there is a statistical and non-statistical. So which refers to the data that are collected from other administrative purposes for a private sectors. So mainly the source of data means it has to be classified to, okay, the same thing, the types of data. So types of data may be from internal and external. Primary data methods. So okay, under this the data types will be primary and secondary. So under this primary data means data means the first hand information collected by the investigator. So it is collected for the first time, which is original and more reliable. So for example, the population census conducted by the government in India after every 10 years. So after 10 years it will be in a first statistical, so it will be in a fresh, and it is a more reliable. Okay, so in this the methods of primary data is direct personal investigation. So direct personal investigation means, so one sec. The first one is direct personal investigation. So which means the surveyor collects the data himself or herself. The data is so collected and reliable but is suitable for small projects. Okay. The second one is indirect oral investigation. So it is an indirect one. So which is collection via investigators. So trained investigators are employed to the contact of respondents to collect the data. Third one, information through correspondence. So how through correspondence they will collect the information from the correspondents who are responsible for the investigation. Okay. Then telephonic interview. So by this the collection of data is done through the asking questions over the telephone to give quick and accurate informations. Next one is mailed questionnaire. This is under this method, a questionnaire containing a number of questions related to the investigation is prepared, is then sent to the informants by post along with the instruction to fill. So the informer, after filling up the questionnaire, sends it back to the investigators. The next one is enumerators. Enumerators means these are the persons who help the investigators in a collection of data. So this enumerator personally visits the informants along with the questionnaire, ask questions and note down their responses in the questionnaire in his own language. The second type of data is secondary data. Okay, under the secondary data, which means it is opposite to the primary. Once primary have done, the following upcoming investigators or researcher will find the data from the primary data for first impression, first information. Okay, so they are collected and publicly related. They can be used as source of data and used by the surveyors to collect the data from and conduct the analysis. So this secondary data are impure in the sense that they have undergone statistical treatment at least once. So method of secondary data collection. So this is official publication such as Ministry of Finance, Statistical Department of Government, Federal Bureaus, Agriculture Statistical Board. These are the etc. These semi-official sources include State Bank, Board of Economic Equity. And the second method is data published by chambers of commerce, okay, the trade association or boards. And third method, articles in the newspaper, journals, technical publications. And the next we're gonna see is accuracy of data. Okay, accuracy of data. So by this, data accuracy is a component of a data quality and refers to whether the data value stored for an object and or the correct value. So in order for data accurate, the data must value be the right value and they must be represented in the consistent ambiguous forms. So in fact, there are two components of data accuracy. The content and form means the first one, there are two components. The first one is content, just needs to be right. Okay, so in this, so much of organization decisions, comparisons and aggregations are based off the data, so that any error make room from inaccurate usage of our data. And then second one is form eliminates ambiguities about the content. So unfortunately, for many organizations, there is a certain degree of discipline and needed to create a consistent form, and many users have created own standardization. So but form needs to be standardized across the organization for data to be accurate. So this accurately reported on. So value is not an accurate if the user cannot tell what it is. So then the components that can affect your data accuracy, which will affect the component. Okay, the first one is manual entry. The most common form data accuracy seems to be manual entry. So errors from the manual entry often occurs the initial data entries users comes as a typographical errors. So these users enter the whole wrong, so it's forever stored in a database. Then second one is data decay. Okay, so which means the manual entry might be occasional issue, but data decay is the more persistent problem when dealing with a valid correct data. So this data can start out as accurate but over time become inaccurate due to the multitude of factors. So for example, addresses, telephone numbers, marital status change in all time, price books and budgets get booked data, sorry, making it difficult to always ensure correct data. And third one is data movement. So finally, the data movement can occur when the moving data from one to another place. So data can be altered into some degree as such, converting to the wrong format or even being placed in a wrong location, especially when the software running to the database is not very robust. Then in the accuracy, the effects of poor data. What will be the effects if they collect the poor data? The first one is inconsistencies. So data needs to be easily understood by the end users, but when data is represented in a variety of ways, it can lead a big problem. So these data can be inaccurate if it is inconsistent in a representation. So these values can evade a good data and then open the door for the uses of inaccurate data. So much the database usage involved in a comparison and aggregation. So this is compared because of different formats are not comparable. So data needs to be inconsistent forms to be used throughout an organization and in accordance with the business data models and architectures. Then second one is too many moving pieces. So which means data elements are never recorded in isolation. So these database are not static. Large database generally have the data flowing into them and from many different sources. For instance, personal records are entered at a different time than others, invoices, payments, inventory records. So this is because the business objects represent real world objects or events. So which is typically happen in a various times. If there are different groups updating data with a different criteria for when to add an object means to remove an object, database can end up with object inconsistencies. So this can lead to knowing only bits and pieces of information, making it difficult to draw conclusions. So making truth to belief is a knowledge. The next one, unreliability. So value validity encourages data reliability. For value to be considered valid, it must be represented in a consistent form. So but even in a valid value may not be accurate just because there is a data. So does not automatically mean that the data is right. So yet business will continue running reports and creating forecasts based off data simply because there is data to analyze, and the presence of a data increase reliability. So even if the data is inaccurate, to be accurate data must also be valid and have the correct value. Next one is incompleteness. Incompleteness means it occurs when data values are missing. But the secret is that the data element that has no value may be either accurate or inaccurate. So, for example, if a person other orders 12 pens and other forms of accounts of 12 pens, and this is missing the data value valid but does not guarantee the accuracy. And distrust. Distrust means it is a missing object or very difficult to detect. So it is never obvious when a database is missing informations or the information is inaccurate. When a business cannot trust their data, it could be a difficult to get buy-in, encourage adoption of a data sources. So inaccurate data can be mislead users when data is inconsistent, unreliable, and not trusted by the organization, and it can be difficult to move confidently forward on a plan. The next one, the process of data quality assurance. So how the process will be. So what are the process means? The first one, set data governance rules. But before starting, they have to set the data governance rules. So what it means, they have a data governance priority. So this refers to overall the management of availability and usability, integrity, security of a data employed in an enterprise. So to maximize data quality, relevance data has to be business users. So which gain comprehensive understanding of a business objectives. So with the expectation set, combine the information with the experience of the business to create a data governance rules, so everybody within the organization understand how data will be validated. And the second one is, sorry, we'll move on one by one. The same thing, data quality assurance. Okay, we already seen what is data quality assurance. This is the process of first one, set data government rules, we already seen. Second one, so see, so how to set the data means they have to identify the problem and they have to set the criteria, second one, and observe practices or a data collection. After that they have to compare the performance, how it is worked before and after the data collection, data quality. Okay, so before the first quality and the second quality they have to compare, and finally after that they have to implement the change, how the implementation will be. Okay, by that they have to implement the change. So second one is evaluate new data to create the baseline. So which means set data governance rules high by having an accurate baseline to measure a data quality against checking the source of systems. So for potential and newly created data. So this is a scan for consistency in a data values, formats, completeness to identify outliner values that might indicate errors. So which is consistency and delegate with result in more accurate data. And the third one is standardized metadata. Okay, it means a new information comes in various sources. It's important to establish corporate standards to limit the inconsistencies. So which means they have to standardize the consolidation through the standardization. After that only they can move the continuation of improvements by the standard increasing. Okay, they have to increase the quality improvement and they have to increase the time too for checking. Okay, the fourth one is checking data never stops. So why it is never stopping? Continuously check the data validity by developing automated services to ensure. So which is obeyed by your organization's data governance rules. So which run reports to identify and set up a data quality dashboard for an encompassing view. So this is the aggregated merits across the data systems. And finally, this is a keep track of data quality breaches. So which means measuring compliance with your data governance rules will only improve with the standard process for evaluating and eliminating the source of data errors. So which establish an incident management system to automate reporting and prioritizing data quality issues to mitigate data quality problems in the future. So by this process of data quality assurance is over. So mainly the same thing for extra. Okay, severity, inconsistency, incompleteness, missing or unknown, accuracy, precision. Okay, these information guides the data QC process to use the data for analysis in an application of a business process. So if the data QC, okay, questionnaire quality control, okay, process finds the data contains too many errors and inconsistencies, so then it prevents the data from being used for its intended errors and inconsistencies, which could cause a disruption within the business. Establishing a data QC process provides a protection over the data usage and establishes safe information usage. So next, which we're going to see is value representation consistency. Okay, so which means two values can be both correct and unambiguous and still cause a problems. So for example, the data values, why consistency is a part of accuracy means the values are different. Anyone looking at them would have no trouble interpreting what the values mean. So the answer is the consistency values cannot be accurately aggregated and compared, since the much of database usage involves comparison aggregation. So these inconsistencies create an opportunity for inaccurate usage of a data. So because all database have the base level of uses through the opportunity for queries, data is inaccurate. Change induced inconsistencies. So which is this can be caused a system change. So the change the way information recorded on the change on recording. So following is the example how change a granularity might introduce inconsistencies. Third one, valid values. Okay, so this is the definition of value being the valid means simply the value is the collection of possible accurate values represented unambiguous consistency. So it means that the value has a potential be accurate. It does not mean that it is accurate. So to be accurate, it must be also a correct value. So defining all values that are valid for a data element is useful because it allows invalid values to be easily spotted and rejected from the database. However, we often mistakenly think values are accurate because they are valid. Next one, missing values. So missing values means the data element that has no value in it may either accurate or inaccurate. Okay, so the missing value are very problematic in database because of the characteristics. To be accurate in a recording information, an optional data element should allow encoding value of null. So this is probably done by creating a separate field that indicate whether the value is in the first field and missing or not. So in this instance, the value in the primary field would be set to blank if no college had been attended. Next one, missing level accuracy. So this is the meaning. The concept of accuracy also helps applies above the data element levels. So these elements are never recorded in isolation. So they have value attributes and business objects such as a personal records. So the orders, invoice, payments, inventory records. So the business objects represent real world objects or events, and each consists of one or more rows of one or more tables conducted through S. So this object level accuracy consists of objects that are missing have missing parts that exist but should not. So next one, data reliability. Okay, so data reliability means a collection of techniques aiming at ensuring consistency of a data distributed setting such as mobile environment. So in this specific case, data consistency is due to fault unavailability, wireless protocols, devices. So under this, the first one, test. What are the tests they are facing means reliability, retest reliability. Okay, the first one is reliability and second one is retest reliability. How they will, the reliability means mainly it consists consistency of measures. Okay, psychologists consider three types of consistency. The first one, test retest over time. Okay, internal across the items, and inter-rater reliability means across different researchers. So in this first one, test retest reliability, so which when the researchers measures the construct that they assume to be consistent across time, then the scores they obtain should also be consistent across the time. So test retest reliability is the extent of which this will be produce roughly the same score for the individual next week as it totally does today. Next, internal consistency. So internal consistency means across items. So a second kind, it is across items. So which is consistency of people responses across the items and multiple item measures. So all the items such as a measure of supposed to reflect same underlying construct. The people scores self-esteem, people who agree that they are a person of a worth. So to the different items that are not correlated with each other, then it would no longer make sense to claim that they are all measuring the same underlying construct. So to this is the as true as behavioral psychological measures, these self-report measures. Next one, interrated reliability. So many behavioral measures involve significant judgment on the part of any observer or rather. So interrated reliability is the extent that which difference observes a consistency in their judgments. So for the example, if you were interested in a measuring university students social skills, you could make a video recordings of them as they interacted with another student whom they are meeting for the first time. So then you could have two or more observers watch the videos, rate the each student's level of social skills. And the next one, threats to reliability. So which these are the those factors that cause error. So after all, the instability or inconsistency in the measurements you are using that comes from such error. Some of the sources of error in the dissertation may include, so this researcher or observer error. So this environmental changes and participant changes. So by this today's class is over. We'll meet you all in next class. Thank you and take care.